Today we're talking about Resurrection F, the movie that hinges on the return of Frieza. No, not that return. No, not that return. Or that one. Or that one. Or that one. Or that one. Or that guy who looks like him. Or that guy. Or that guy. Or that guy. Welcome to Dragon Ball Dissection, where a whiny bitich can't just appreciate a story, but has to nitpick and poke holes about every little thing. Alright, pay up. But, tongue in my cheek aside, this troll's fake quote might actually be applicable this time. I mean, this comment inexplicably originated from my Battle of Gods review, which is wild, given that I don't know how I could have been more glowing about that movie if I tried. But we're talking about a different movie today. Now, I've been pretty snarky about Resurrection F ever since I first saw it. And to be clear, actually getting to see it in theaters in America the same year that it came out in Japan was pretty amazing all by itself. But as amazing as such a concept was, I didn't think the movie was very good. In fact, I saw Dragon Ball Evolution for the first time only a couple of months later, and I declared that it was the better movie of the two. Perhaps Evolution got everything wrong about Dragon Ball, but at least it was interested in telling a story. It might be a bad story, but at least it was more entertaining. And then I put both movies away and never engaged with them again for 10 years. Well, I returned to Dragon Ball Evolution earlier this year. Now it's time for Resurrection F. What I really want to do is be thoughtful about this. I don't want to be dismissive or dripping in sarcasm. Trust me when I say I've done my best in this video to give this movie a fair shake. Hopefully, whether you like this movie or not, you'll be able to see where I'm coming from. So no, I'm not just going to immediately say whether or not my opinion from 10 years ago holds, because I feel like we need to go on this journey together. Let's start with the title, Fukatsu no F. Believe it or not, this title comes from the Maximum the Hormone song F, a tribute song about the character of Frieza. In fact, Toriyama went to see them perform in 2012 and gifted them Dragon Ball sketches. Toriyama liked the stylized F of the song and wanted to include it in the title of the movie. The song itself features in the movie. By this point, the song is probably as popular as the movie itself, if not more so. It's not really my thing. Yeah, I'm in trouble already. That's not to say I actively dislike it, it's just that metal has never really been a type of music that appeals to me. Needs more disco and mouth harps, if you ask me. Still, though, I can't deny that the refrain of Frieza, Frieza, Frieza is quite catchy. The rest of it I don't find particularly memorable, musically speaking, although some of the lyrics are just off the wall enough to charm me. His upper arms are pink, pink, pink. His head is sick, sick, sick. Just what I always wanted, a Dragon Ball song written in the style of Final Fantasy VII's English translation. In Resurrection F, a remnant of Frieza's forces decides to use the Dragon Balls to wish Frieza back to life. Frieza, now alive, decides to go to Earth to get his revenge against Son Goku. And so they fight. And that's pretty much all that happens. Yeah, I'm beginning to remember that there's a reason why I hated this movie. I will never forget my experience watching this in the theaters and the exact moment when I completely deflated that it hit me that I'd already seen the best this movie had to offer. As soon as those 1,020 soldiers started going after our heroes, I realized that this was going to be the entire rest of the movie. The story was over. All I had to look forward to was empty, boring action sequences. I will never forget that feeling of dread washing over me. And, This is not my first rodeo. It's not my first formulaic Dragon Ball Z movie. So why am I holding this one to such a high standard? Well, for one, this movie is an hour and a half long, not 45 minutes. But beyond that, there are two reasons why this was such a letdown for me. The first is that Battle of Gods 2 years earlier showed me what a Dragon Ball Z movie could actually be. It could be about something. It could introduce new things. It could expand how we see the characters and the world. And yes, it could have the spectacular battles too. All of that could even be contained in a story that was pretty light and fluffy. This movie seemed like it was poised to be the movie that took the training wheels off. More importantly, though, is the fact that everything before that point is very good. That's the first 40 minutes. I'd forgotten just how much it was. That's nearly half the movie. And believe me, once we get through this point, this rant, this tirade, I'm going to laud some of those aspects. But you might be confused right now. I got 40 minutes of story and character interaction. That's far more than most of the movies give me. What's the problem? Well, if you've been watching Dragon Ball Dissection for a long time, you might remember this little term I came up with. The designated leisure activity of the film. Trademark. That's what I used to refer to what would sometimes happen in the 90s movies. Just so the entire film wasn't a one-note fight sequence with no variation, they'd throw in an opening scene of the characters doing something. Anything. Just to provide the most transparent veneer of context. Then, after about 5 minutes, it would be dropped and have absolutely nothing to do with anything ever again. There is a difference between that and actually telling a story. Gohan and the others camping is telling a story. They meet a pet who's going to motivate Gohan's actions and reactions. They save the forest that the villains then callously destroy again because their whole thing is sapping a planet of its resources. Even Yamcha's stupid car provides him with a little bit of motivation for being involved. Compare that to Women Be Shoppin' in the movie where I coined the term, where the shopping is simply a thing the characters are doing until it's interrupted, followed by nothing else happening. Resurrection F's first 40 minutes raise a lot of interesting ideas. What does Frieza's empire look like without Frieza? What happens to that empire when Frieza becomes more focused on revenge than on what he was resurrected to do? What happens when Frieza can't find future Trunks, the man who actually killed him, because he doesn't exist in this timeline? What has inspired Kuririn to actually get a job? You could make a movie out of any one of those things. And I was so excited to see where those things might go. Then at 39 minutes and 28 seconds, all of those ideas fell straight off of a cliff. Look, I admit I'm not sold on this premise. Just the thought of bringing Frieza back again makes me roll my eyes. But that doesn't mean you can't do something interesting with it. Despite being written by Toriyama himself, despite that story being praised by his former editor, it's all just an excuse to see Frieza again. Then, once you get him on screen, hey, we got him on screen. Who cares what happens after that? Just run out the clock. The story and action don't complement each other. They exist almost completely independently. In 2015, I was incredibly invested in all of the film's ideas. I will never forget that moment because I thought I was watching the first act of a movie, only to realize I had just sat through 40 minutes of the designated leisure activity of the film. Trademark. But hey, Jocko's here, despite not being a Dragon Ball character or having had any connection to any Dragon Ball characters in decades of his life. Mechanically, the only role he fulfills is to come to Earth to alert Bluma of the imminent arrival of Frieza, something I feel half a dozen other characters who were actually a part of this series could have accomplished instead. It retroactively raises all sorts of questions, like, if Jocko knew how to get in touch with Bluma and the Earth is part of his regular jurisdiction, why did he not alert her the last time Frieza came to Earth? Or when the Saiyans came to Earth? Or when Bobby D came to Earth? Why Jocko? Why now? Well, I know exactly why Jocko and why now. It's Jocko because his own series came out 2 years earlier, and this is the first chance Dragon Ball has had to capitalize on that. It's now because he didn't exist before now. Toriyama wrote this movie, so it makes sense Jocko would be fresh on his mind. But geez, does it not make sense to the story? He's just one more body to fill out the bench. He fills out the bench, but Trunks, whose alternate reality counterpart's defeat of Frieza is referenced several times in this movie, doesn't appear at all. Way to choose your cast, movie. But what's worse is that he's nothing but a big old head scratcher for anyone who didn't read Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, since the movie barely even attempts to explain who he is. And that's not good. If you're going to import a character from another series, he needs to have a role in the story, and the audience needs to be told who he is. This isn't like the Dr. Slump crossover where, at least in its home country, it had its own cultural footprint, even bigger than Dragon Ball's at that point. I remember feeling a distinct wave of confusion wash over the theater when I knew I was one of the only people in that building who had the slightest idea who this character was, because they hadn't read Jocko. And why should they have been expected to? This movie has nothing to do with the story of Jocko the Galactic Patrolman. There were a lot of people in 2015 who had no idea who Jocko was then. And given how few of you bothered to watch the 2 episodes on Jocko I just made, I have a feeling a lot of you still don't know. Well, that's okay. I'm not bitter. And I won't leave you hanging just because you didn't watch. Jocko is a robot created by this man, Dr. Gero. Dr. Gero names his creation Mask Man, but Jocko doesn't like that, so he renames himself Jocko. Dr. Gero also creates another robot, Tights. They go on a rampage through the eastern metropolis, which gets the attention of the Red Ribbon Army. A whole squad led by Red's former roommate's son Polka Dot come to the island to recruit Dr. Gero into their evil schemes, but not before the robots break free of their programming. Jocko decides to leave Earth to become a space policeman. Tights seeks out Dr. Brief and his family because she knows Capsule Corporation will be a safe place for an artificial life form, and she's right because they adopt her as their own child. And that's how Bluma has a sister you've never heard of before this movie. Trust me. As I said, there is a lot about this movie that I enjoy, but even then I enjoy it more for what it teases rather than what it ends up being. I love that the leader of Frieza's army is not a Ginyu, not a Zarbon, not some heavyweight. It's Sorbet, this sad little paper pusher who is struggling to hold things together. What I wouldn't give to see more of his story. Why couldn't there be some conflict? That Sorbet knows that Frieza is too much of a wild card to his own people, which the movie frequently demonstrates. So he doesn't know if he even wants to bring Frieza back, but he's just too forced into a corner. Maybe there's conflict after Frieza comes back, where Sorbet begins to doubt if this was the right move, if Frieza is so obsessed with revenge that he doesn't seem at all interested in helping the organization like Sorbet wants. Given that the opening scenes of this movie focus on Sorbet and his quest to bring Frieza back to life, you'd think he'd be an important character. But no, he's just an important plot device. Kuririn getting a job as a Satan City police officer is a nice new bit for his character. He's presumably helping his community. I like when the characters find useful outlets for their martial arts gifts. He stops some criminals. He even gets a nifty ringtone referencing Tanaka Mayumi's role in One Piece, which I guess is pretty popular. Judging from the title, I guess it's about swimsuits. All in all, Kurdirin's role is pretty charming. I just wish it was done in service of some kind of a story, rather than, well, his designated employment activity of the film. Trademark. The bits of Toriyama's humor that shine through are as clever as ever. I love that Frieza's version of hell is to be trapped in a cocoon, surrounded by happy stuffed animals and bunny girl fairies and... Gachan? I love that in the tag, Frieza has returned to hell and is enjoying it just as much. Perhaps my favorite bit of the movie is that when Sorbet wishes Frieza back to life, Shenlong brings him back as he died. A number of chopped up bits. Pilaf, who has been forced to help them find the Dragon Balls, actually picks up the blob with one of Frieza's eyes, which blinks at him. It's so wonderfully, ridiculously grotesque. It genuinely brings a huge smile to my face just to talk about it. The main character elements of the movie that aren't left to wither and die focus on Goku and Vegeta. They are both training with Whis, and Whis pinpoints a flaw in each of them. Vegeta is too tense, while Goku is too relaxed and overconfident. I don't even have time to get into that today. Let's save that for the story arc version, but at least the movie has an idea it plays with, flaws that impact how they fight Frieza. That brings me to Frieza himself. There was never a point where bringing him back didn't feel like a pandering rehash, as if Dragon Ball had truly run out of ideas right after the last movie had introduced so many new ones. This is actually the main element where I have come to disagree with my younger self. Kinda. I could still do without this, but you want to know something? Since 2018, Dragon Ball Dissection has covered Cell, and Super Number 17, and Yi Shenlong. I have made it no secret that I find a lot of Dragon Ball's villains from that era underwhelming, to say the least. Watching this in 2025, I found myself immediately charmed by Frieza, charmed by Nakao Ryusei. There's a moment where, after the henchmen are defeated, one of them apologizes to Frieza for failing. Frieza tells him not to apologize. He understands. It's fine. But, uh-oh, you're all kind of in the way. And then he kills them all. The boss killing the henchmen is such a stock move in this series, but Frieza manages to do it with such panache. It's hard not to appreciate Frieza after everything else I've seen. And while I'd still rather they come up with a new compelling character, at least there is a compelling character on screen. The problem with Frieza in this movie, though, is that while he is a compelling character, he never comes across as a credible threat. Even when he debuts his new transformation, Golden Frieza, it never feels like he has a substantial upper hand, largely because Goku can turn his hair blue now. Yes, Goku gets another new action figure transformation, and unlike the one in the last movie, it has no story at all. It's just kinda there. But even if this new form is shallow, Frieza can't begin to compete against it. And if that didn't deflate the tension, Vegeta can do it too. The only times Frieza truly outmatches the heroes are when he gets Sorbet to take out Goku while Goku's off guard, and when he decides to just blow up the planet because he lost. Oh wow, Frieza getting desperate and blowing up the planet he's fighting on? What a surprising development. In other words, Frieza is only ever threatening when he is engaged in dirty dealings, sneaking around because he can't put up a fight directly. That's not intimidating. That's pathetic. That's not to say I don't like alternative strategy or villains being sneaky. In case you forgot, I thought last year in GT, Goku was being incredibly whiny to complain every time every villain tried anything that was even slightly indirect. Classic Frieza used dishonorable tactics too, and that was cool. But it was only after he had proven how legitimately terrifying he was, and after the heroes had clawed their way back. It's satisfying to see that Frieza finally brought low. This, well, it makes Golden Frieza seem like a total joke. He struts about, bragging of his plans for revenge, and breaks out his gaudy new transformation, but it's the pudgy accountant wearing a ring pop who presents a more credible threat. Worst wish in history? More like a slightly inconvenient afternoon. And that's the thing. I remember that tagline really igniting my imagination before the movie came out. Sure, maybe I wasn't thrilled about Frieza coming back, but what was this worst wish in history? I mean, it couldn't just be bringing Frieza back to life. People use the Dragon Balls for stuff like that all the time. I remember a theory going around that took the poster into account. The only heroes shown were those who had fought Frieza on Namek. Kuririn's head was shaved again, Gohan had a markedly different look, including his open-drawn pre-Kaioshin eyes. Goku and Vegeta were wearing outfits unlike anything we'd ever seen before. The theory went that maybe this worst wish was that Frieza had never lost on Namek in the first place, which would throw everything that happened after that out of whack. Maybe the heroes would be purposely included in the knowledge, so they'd have to live under the regime of a Frieza-dominated Earth, utterly confused by this new world, but knowing how much better things are supposed to be. They would have to figure out a way to set things right with the deck stacked against them. I don't know, something. It didn't have to be that, but at least that would be something we hadn't seen before. At least it would be a start. It would be interesting to see a bad Dragon Ball wish directly impact the heroes, and there's nothing they can do about it but deal with it. Something we've now actually seen in Dragon Ball Daima. Surely if Frieza was coming back, they'd buoy the story up with something really big. Surely if this movie was about the worst wish in history, it would do something more creative than simply wish Frieza back to life in order to recreate a watered-down highlight reel of the Frieza arc. Surely if famed hard-ass editor Torishima Kazuhiko praised Toriyama's story, it would actually have one. Turns out, no. Then there's the ending, which sees Frieza blow up the Earth, and Whis fixes it by rolling back time. Oh hey, it's a time travel violation. Is that why Jocko's in this movie? Is he going to do something about this? No? Okay. Yeah, this is weak, to say the least. It's supposed to be the resolution of Goku's and Vegeta's character flaws, and the solution is simply, you should have blown Frieza up faster. So Whis rolls back time, Goku blows Frieza up faster, and all the Vegeta fans get upset that Vegeta was robbed of his kill. Everything is put back the way it was, Goku and Vegeta still insist they won't learn anything, and it turns out, neither will Dragon Ball. I went back on the Kanzenshuu forums to look at some of my old posts about this movie, given how long it had been since I watched it. Wow, I sure was angry back then. I'm not really angry now. Rewatching the movie did not make me angry. I'm sure part of that is that I knew what to expect. I'll never again feel that shock of everything I care about falling off a cliff. I knew it was coming, so I wasn't disappointed. But I also think I wasn't angry because I've gotten used to it. Over the past few months, I have framed Dragon Ball outings made around this time in their relation to the overall revival of Dragon Ball. I called the JSAT special the last of the old and the first of the new. I said that Battle of Gods marks the point where Dragon Ball was back. Resurrection F, though, despite its Dragon Ball Z branding, feels like a pilot for the Dragon Ball Super series. Goku and Vegeta positioned as inseparable bickering partners? Dragon Ball Super does that. Banking on nostalgia and legacy characters? Dragon Ball Super does that. Creating an impenetrable gulf between story and action? Dragon Ball Super does that. So many of the aspects of this movie that made me angry in 2015 have become codified to the point that they just feel like business as usual now. I've become desensitized. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just disappointed. Because I actually did like this movie a lot more than I did 10 years ago. There are so many aspects of it I wish I'd seen more done with. And some of that wasted potential is because the movie was more interested in shoveling in fan service. However, it's not as if some of those things couldn't be picked up or expanded on in, say, a series. So, I'm not angry, but as to my initial comparison, yeah, I'd still probably want to watch Evolution over this. It's more fun, even if it's unintentionally so. Just 10 days after the release of Resurrection F, Toei announced a whole new Dragon Ball series, Dragon Ball Super, which would comprise a television series and a promotional manga. And that series would start the ball rolling by rolling the two most recent movies into its storyline. Yeah, we're finally here! Dragon Ball Dissection December for 2025 is going to see us return to these movie stories, but in different forms. So again, if this movie review missed some things you wanted me to talk about, well, that might be because it's better suited there. I had to cut out so much from this script. But before that, I'm opening next month with a What is Super video, similar to how I started with GT. There are a lot of general points about Super I want to make that I don't want to get bogged down with while covering its respective arcs. I also need to explain to you exactly how I plan to cover the different versions, as this is not like any Dragon Ball series we've covered here before. So be sure to join me once again for Dragon Ball Dissection December, my annual Dragon Ball Dissection Marathon, where you will get new DVD videos on the 4th, the 11th, the 18th, Christmas Day, and the 31st. I'll see you there.